There's a sound people make when they wake up at 3 in the morning and can't get a full breath. They sit up, they reach for another pillow, and in the morning they tell themselves they just slept badly. Nobody just collapses out of nowhere. The dramatic version, the clutch your chest, fall to the floor version, is almost never how this starts. It was allowed for years, just not in a language you were ever taught to hear. So today, the 4 things a failing heart does before it announces itself, and the 4 perfectly reasonable explanations that get them missed every single time. By the end, you'll know the pattern, why the system keeps mistaking it for getting older, and exactly what to do with it. Let's start with a case. The kind a licensing exam could build, stitched from how this actually presents. Somebody spends 2 years doing less. They take the elevator now. They stopped walking the dog as far. They sleep propped up because lying flat feels wrong. They're tired in a way that coffee doesn't help. 4 different things, and 4 different people gave them 4 different answers. Getting older, out of shape, poor sleep, and stress. But not one of them mentioned heart. Here's the fact that reorganizes all of it. A failing heart does not go quiet because nothing is wrong. It goes quiet because your body is actively covering for it. It has a kind of backup system that kicks in the moment the pump weakens, and it works so well that for years the only thing you feel is slightly less. The silence isn't the absence of the disease. The silence is the disease working. Think of the heart as a pump on a loop. When the pump starts to fall behind because it's too weak to empty properly or too stiff to fill properly, 2 things happen. First, blood and fluid start to back up behind it, into the lungs, into the legs, and into the belly. The backup is the congestion in congestive heart failure, and it's where most of the signs come from. Second, and this is the part that hides everything, your body refuses to let your blood pressure drop. It floods the system with stress signals and fluid-holding hormones to keep the pressure up and the output going. That's the backup generator. It keeps the lights on, hence why the congestive heart failure can go silent. But it does it by making the heart work even harder against even more fluid. So the very thing keeping you feeling almost normal is also quietly making the failure worse. So the disease has a built-in disguise. For years, the generator carries you, and all you notice is that the hill got steeper, the stairs got longer, the dog walk got shorter, and here's what almost nobody is told. About half of all heart failure happens with a heart that still squeezes normally on the scan. A normal heart result doesn't mean the pump is fine, which is exactly why this gets waved through. Now for 4 signs, and some reasonable cover stories that come with them. Sign 1. Breathlessness that rewrites your life before you ever consider it breathlessness. You might not notice you're short of breath, but you notice you stop doing things. Instead of taking the stairs, you take the elevator. You stop halfway up the hill. People can call that aging or being out of shape, which is sometimes true. But a creeping shrink in what your body can let you do is one of the earliest signs of a failing heart. Sign 2. The breathlessness that's worse when you're lying flat, needing an extra pillow to sleep, or waking up in the middle of the night to sit up and catch your breath. When you lie down, the fluid that was pooling in your legs is redistributed into your lungs. So the position itself unmasks the congestion. That a lot of the times gets blamed on things like bad sleep, anxiety, a stuffy nose. However, it is one of the most loudest things your lungs can say about your heart. If nobody ever connected those dots for you, that's the whole job of this channel. I take the things the appointment couldn't assemble and assemble them. Subscribe and the next one finds you. 2 signs in, and notice the shape of it. Each one has a true, boring explanation sitting right next to it. Now watch the next 2, because the 3rd one is the only sign on this list you can measure at home before breakfast. And if you're the person who has been told it's just your age, or just stress, or just a cough that won't quit, and some part of you has felt that the explanation doesn't fit, you're not imagining that. Probably because nobody assembled the pattern, because nobody was in the room to see all 4 signs. The next part is the assembly. Sign 3 is the measurable one: swelling and sudden weight. Fluid in a failing pump will build up in your ankles, in your legs, and sometimes in your belly. And because fluid is heavy, it shows up on the scale before it shows up in the mirror. The warning version isn't slow weight gain over months. It's fast over days. A jump of a couple pounds in a day or several over a week can mean that your body is holding onto fluid faster than it should. That one number, tracked at home, is the closest thing to an early warning sign this whole disease has. And the exact threshold is something to set with your physician, because it's a personal number. Sign 4 is the imposter, a dry, nagging cough or a wheeze that isn't a cold and won't leave. When fluid backs into the lungs, it irritates them, and the body coughs. It gets treated as a lingering chest infection, or as allergies, sometimes as asthma, for months. A cough that's worse when you lie down, that travels with the breathlessness and the swelling, is not behaving like a cold. 4 signs, 4 true, reasonable, individually correct sounding explanations, and 1 quiet cause underneath all of them. And one hard line before we go further. This is a slow pattern video, not an emergency video. If breathlessness comes on suddenly or severely, if there's chest pain, if there's swelling over a day or 2, that is not something to watch on YouTube and think about. Go to the emergency ward as soon as possible. And to be completely clear, if you've already been diagnosed with heart failure or heart disease, nothing here is a reason to change or stop anything on your own. Your medications and your weight limits are yours and your physician's, not a common section's. Here's the idea that ties the whole thing together, and it's the part that's genuinely counterintuitive. We miss heart failure for years, not because the signs are hidden. They are right there. We miss it because every single sign has an honest, ordinary twin, and because we've all been trained to wait for an event. We're scanning for the collapse, so a slow trend that never becomes a dramatic moment slides under the radar, one reasonable explanation at a time. Which means the thing that gets it missed and the thing that defines the disease are the same thing: the silence. A single sign in isolation is almost noise. Lots of people are tired, or out of breath on a hill, or a bit swollen after a long flight. But the cluster of symptoms moving in the same direction over months, that is the signal. You're not looking for a single symptom. You're looking for a trend you've been taught to normalize. And here's the part that should change what you do with this. Medicine already agrees with this framing. The current heart failure guideline doesn't start the disease at the collapse. It defines a stage before any symptom at all, called at risk, and a stage called pre-heart failure. The disease was named before the signs on purpose, because that's where it's cheapest to change the ending. The treatments exist, and every one of them works better the earlier it starts. You don't need to diagnose yourself, and please don't. You need one move. If 2 or more of these are creeping in the same direction, you bring that pattern, not the single symptom, to your own physician, and you ask them to look at the trend. That turns the 4 shrugged off explanations into one question worth answering. A failing heart spends years holding the line, compensating so well it hides its own decline, right up until it can't. That's not weakness in the body, it's the body buying you time. The only thing it asks for in return is that you learn to read the signs and act accordingly. And if you're wondering what quietly builds toward a heart like this in the first place, The single biggest driver is a number most people treat as a snapshot, when it's actually a running total. I took that exact number apart in the blood pressure video, and it's the one I'd watch first.